I'm here now with Joseph from Plaxo. Could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do at Plaxo?
Sure. Hi, I'm Joseph Smarr. I'm the Chief Platform Architect at Plaxo, and I was also their first employee, so do a lot of stuff involving setting up Plaxo's online address book and calendar, and increasingly now working on our initiative to help open up the social web so that users can get the data in and out of all, not only the traditional address books and calendars that they use that Plaxo helps them sync together, but also now all these online social networks that they use, and getting rid of the sort of walled gardens that are in place in a lot of cases. So that's why we're very excited to be working with Google on a similar front.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Plaxo.com for people who don't know the history of it? And like
sure. So
Plaxo,
we've got a free consumer internet service at Plaxo.com used by about 20 million people and growing that helps you sort of stay in touch with the people that you know and care about across all the different applications and services that you and they use. So for example, I have Outlook at work and a Mac at home, and I use Gmail and I use LinkedIn, and right now normally they would all be separate, but I install Plaxo. We have plugins for Mac and Outlook and Thunderbird and AIM and a bunch of others that helps me keep sort of one up-to-date address book and calendar across all of them. And then each of the members keep their own contact information up to date. So I keep my work info and my home info, and I choose who to share it with. And so if any of my friends or colleagues that use Plaxo get a new job or get a new cell phone, they just update their contact information, and my address book gets updated automatically in all the different places that I use it. So whenever I need to get in touch with somebody, I can just look up their information, and it's always full and it's always up to date. Cool. And so we've run this service for about 5 years, and it was sort of started actually before sort of all the recent activity in social networking took off. And so for us, the initial sort of pain point was a lot about traditional address books and maybe webmail and so forth. But now a lot of people, I think, one of social networks like whether it's a Facebook or a LinkedIn or whatever have become so in many cases with their primary address book, and so they want that same functionality. How come I can't keep in touch with what my friends are doing across these different sites, or how come I friend somebody here and I have to refriend them there, or how come I want to move to some new service and I can't take my information and move it with me? And so these are all those sort of core problems that Plaxo's always dealt with. So it's interesting to now apply it in this new world. Great.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you guys have decided to build on top of the OpenSocial platform?
Oh, sure. So, what I think you can see here is Plaxo Pulse, which is sort of our attempt to do a kind of a next generation open social network that rather than making people build proprietary apps for a proprietary platform, you can share the things you're putting up on your blog, on YouTube, on Delicious, on Flickr, on Twitter, Last.fm, sort of 40 different sites and growing, all using sort of open standards. And the idea is just to sort of, again, sort of get one kind of web-wide news feed of what people I know are up to. And so along that vein, too, people like to be able to build these socially enabled applications that we've seen are very popular, and we want to be able to let people do that in an open way so that they can keep building on this platform, and then they're not having to build for Plaxo. And so I think Google is showing great leadership to not only build a platform that they can use for their own properties, but to open it up in a way that empowers developers to really sort of write that once and use it across a variety of different sites, and more importantly, to be able to actually use the sort of social graph native to the site that they're on, so that you really are sort of building a social gadget in the more generic sense of the term, and not just a Orkut-specific gadget or a Facebook-specific gadget. So that's a very exciting development, and it's a natural place to stick it into Pulse because we already have these activity streams and we already have profiles, and so to be able to take advantage of all the existing gadgets that people have already built, and then to be able to use these social gadgets with the Plaxo information, I think is something we're very excited about. And I'd say in particular, because we have a lot of users who who aren't as used to all these social networks, but maybe are business professionals primarily using Outlook and so forth, they have traditionally not really been able to participate meaningfully in the social web in the same way. But now that all their information is being synced up through Plaxo, if they can start to use these and all of a sudden just work with all the contact information and friends list that they already have, I think that's going to get a lot of people to understand how exciting this new world is that wouldn't have previously seen it. So we're very excited about that.
Great. Can you talk a little bit now about actually implementing on the platform using our APIs, or what technical challenges you faced?
Sure. So it's sort of funny, we just found out about this project, a few weeks ago, I think, like almost everybody else. And so at first we thought, uh-oh, how much are we going to have to, put all our hands on this and scrap everything else we're doing to, it seemed like this major new implementation challenge. But it's proved to be surprisingly easy because, Google already provides a lot of the facilities to take a gadget file, they've got a description, and they can parse it, and you can give you an iframe that you can stick into your page. And so we can kind of just use that as it is. And so it's just been kind of gluing it in, so letting users, maintain a list of gadgets that they've installed and making sure that we can serve the friend APIs and profile APIs in a sort of standard format. But I think Google's chosen wisely to use JSON and other sort of well understood standards so that we already have APIs to do that sort of thing, and it was just a little bit of work to translate them into Google's particular flavor. And then to be able to have the JavaScript to manage all the interaction, something that you can just drop in, has meant that it's been pretty easy to take gadgets that were developed for other containers and just sort of drop them into Plaxo and have them actually serve with Plaxo data.
How many people did you actually have working on this integration? Developers?
Really, honestly, it's been me and a couple other guys, and we've been working on it for a couple of weeks, and that's about it. And we basically got it all working. So, and it's been in fast motion, and the specs have been changing, and there hasn't been a lot of documentation because it's been such an agile project. So I think to be able to have that kind of a challenge and still do it, I think is a testament to the fact that they've actually thought this through in a way that's pretty easy for container developers to work with.
Awesome. So, what do you see? Which applications do you see being most useful for your users? What would you like to see on Plaxo?
Well, I think first of all, just the fact that clearly in the last few months we've seen in general a lot of real enthusiasm about developing applications to plug into social networks, right? And there's been a huge amount of creativity there. And I think even if you look at sites like Facebook, where I don't think they anticipated which applications would end up being the most popular, but the fact that people were able to just sort of go crazy has led to that. And so just being able to see some of that work on Plaxo without us having to build a proprietary platform and try to woo a lot of developers to build to our standards, that's something that we weren't that interested in. And with Pulse, to a large extent, you don't have to do that anyway because most of these sites that you're showing here just use things like RSS feeds and open APIs. But clearly, some of that interactivity on the site is really nice to be able to do. So anything that lets users express themselves and lets them see what their friends are up to and share information with them, share reviews, share sites, share hobbies and so forth that they're interested in, and seeing that within Pulse, which users are learning as sort of a way to figure out what their friends are doing across the web, I think is going to be a great fit. So it just sounded like it was immediately like, yes, this is something we got to do. This is great.
So what would you like to see Google do with OpenSocial next couple months? Like you're saying, we're still in fast development, still going on.
Yeah, well, I think just the announcement of someone as big and forward-thinking as Google stepping out and really throwing their weight behind opening up the social web is a huge, going to be a huge thing because I like at Plaxo and I personally have been trumpeting this for some time. Like I co-authored this Bill of Rights for users of the social web, which is up at OpenSocialWeb.org, which tried to help spell out very concisely sort of that you as a user should have rights to get your data in and out of these sites and sort of what does a site have to implement to really be open and not just sort of say they're open. But this is now going to take that to a whole nother level. And I think working with getting more and more partners involved to help implement this stuff and getting it worked out so that gadget developers can really build with the kind of fine-grained control of information from these different sites that to build the sort of great experiences they want is going to be great. And then just helping be an evangelist, I think, is going to be a big part of that because it's interesting. In the traditional address book world, for example, if you told users you can't get your data out of Microsoft Outlook or Gmail or something, they'd be really angry about it, right? It's like, of course, it's my data. How can you keep it trapped? But I think people haven't quite figured out that social networks are really the same thing, that you're still creating data there. It's your data. It's about you. You should be able to get in and out. And that, to the extent that some of these sites are walled gardens, they're really not serving the rights that you should have as a user. And that's something that I think people just have to wake up to because social networks feel a little bit different, even though really they're doing the same thing. And so I think that's going to be something that Google can help a lot in, sort of helping people realize that and wake up to it. Because over time, I think things do tend to go towards open standards, but it can take a while, and you can have incumbents try to slow things down. And so I think Google will certainly help catalyze that.
Do you think there's any particular features that we should implement that would, serve Plaxo particularly well?
Well, I think both within the OpenSocial framework and within the sort of containers that Google's exposing, I think the next logical step behind being able to build apps in your particular environment is to allow portability of the data in the social graph itself, right? So right now, I'll be able to take a gadget designed to run in Orchid and take it and run it in Plaxo, but it'll be with my Orchid friends in one place and my Plaxo friends in another place. And so being able to actually merge those graphs together and figure out the person I know here is really the same as the person I know there, that I think is going to be a really powerful next step. And it just comes from doing things like letting your users link to some external homepage, or the page they use on another website, or email addresses, or whatever it is that allows them to sort of bind those different identities together in a way that they feel comfortable sharing. And so I think even within Google, right, you have Blogger friends and Gmail friends and Orchid friends. And so I think that's sort of a microcosm for what people are feeling all over the web, which is I just want to keep in touch with the set of people I know, and I want to be able to bucket them into my friends and my family and my business network and so on. And I want to have that all sort of just work. And so, but it seems like OpenSocial is, insofar as that becomes a platform people get excited about, that's going to be sort of a very natural step for that sort of thing to happen, because you'll already have this notion of, well, let me get my friends list and do something cool with them. And as that friends list gets richer and more tied across the web, the gadgets will just sort of get better and better. So I think that's actually a very exciting strategy.
Cool. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say about Plaxo or OpenSocial?
No, well, I'd encourage people to check out Plaxo, and in particular Plaxo Pulse, and you'll see we should have our OpenSocial support up as soon as the announcement goes out, and we'll obviously keep working on this. And if developers want to use, we have a lot of, at Plaxo, I guess, compared to a lot of social networks, we have a lot richer contact information and so forth about our users and other things like that. So if people want to be able to build applications that take advantage of that sort of finer grained control of different types of connections and different richer phone numbers and addresses and all that sort of thing, please let us know, because I think we can obviously add extensibility and play with that on top of OpenSocial. And if that's something that people get excited about, maybe it'll sort of roll into the generic code. So we look forward. This is obviously a sort of a co-evolutionary process, and we're just happy to be part of it.
Great. Thank you very much.